Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Plus 7. Plus 10.
Okay.
All right, we're blow your mind. Ready? Plus 16.
Okay.
Plus 16.
Got it.
What's my total?
88.
Okay, 88 total penalties. What?
Nice.
Got it. And 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody, and welcome to 2M Football.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Matt, and we are rounding out the travel through the AFC North, ending our journey in Cincinnati with the Bengals themselves. And fun fact, in case you guys didn't see our Cleveland Browns assessment, which actually you should because it was very interesting, and it was more fun than we thought.
More than we expected, yeah.
Jim Brown, who originally founded the Browns and who the Browns were named after, when he was fired, actually came down and founded the Cincinnati Bengals. And
really?
I hate you. Once again, it took 4 episodes.
Sorry. Go on.
I know, surprise fact is we didn't just talk about this before we started recording. And actually, the way you can tell this is through the color schemes of the two uniforms. They're very close in colors, and that's why the Bengals helmets had to have the stripes added to the orange, because the original Browns just had a single brown stripe down the middle, and it was really hard for people to tell when you're watching the game who was who. So that's actually where the Bengals stripes on their helmets came from.
That's pretty great.
It's interesting. It's not nobody. I never knew that.
No, I never heard that.
That one guy founded 2 teams in the same state. But let's go ahead and kick things off here. That's a quick recap of who the Bengals are, but let's start it off.
So,
Mike.
Gotcha. In 2016, the Bengals were 6-9-1. They had one of 2 of the games this year that ended in a tie, and that was good for 3rd in the AFC North. Nowhere near a playoff spot. It was.
It's actually the first year they missed in a while.
Yeah, that's been the thing under Marvin Lewis. They've been consistently in the playoffs, consistently losing in the first round of the playoffs, but they've been there every year.
Right, and that has a lot to do with the Red Rocket himself, Mr. Dillon.
The Red Rifle.
Red Rifle?
Yeah.
I call him the Red Rocket.
Red Rocket's something else. Anyway. So let's jump into the Bengals offense. 2016, they averaged 20.3 points per game, which was 24th in the league. They put up 356 yards per game, which was 13th. 246, I can read. 246 of those were passing yards, which was 15th, and 110 of those were rushing yards, good for 13th in the NFL.
Good job.
So they had a balanced offense that was consistently mediocre, but it was balanced. One of the big issues this year was injuries for them. They had their starting tight end, Tyler Eifert. He's a touchdown machine. He's Gronk 2.0. With injuries and everything. He missed the first 6 games of the year. And also their star wide receiver, AJ Green, missed the last 6 games of the year. And one of their top running backs, Giovanni Bernard, also missed the final 6 games.
Yes.
So it was a rough season. And they're also coming off of kind of a change in their offense, as 2 of their top receivers from 2015, Marvin Jones and Mohamed Sanu, both left the team and didn't return after 2015. So there was a little bit of turnover plus some injuries. Not super surprising that they struggled.
No, but I think what I really liked on their offense was the emergence of 2 of the 3 players to really cover. Tight end, I really didn't see. Nothing really. Let's see, tight end, Tyler
Croft, yeah, he was a rookie. Him and CJ Uzoma both got significant playing time.
Uzoma I like, though. I noticed his name more than Croft. But I wasn't paying attention. But the 2 players that stood out to me that stepped up, especially towards the end of the season after AJ Green went down, was Brandon LaFell.
Yeah. Brandon
LaFell, who's listed here as the number 2, and I think that's perfect. I like this kid. I think, he was on the field with AJ Green, but when AJ Green went down, obviously they have to move you around and you become the number 1, and I think he was a very comparable number 1. He wasn't as big. I
wouldn't say comparable. No one's comparable to AJ Green.
But given your situation and LaFell, I mean, it's a big change because when you get moved to the number 1 receiver, regardless of name, always takes the most coverage.
Right.
There's a reason you're the number 1.
Well, LaFell's reason was that Green got injured.
But it still made him the number one, did he not?
Okay. You're not wrong? Okay, go ahead.
Exactly. I'm right.
You're not wrong. You're not right either, but you're not wrong.
So I'm Baltimore, just right. Did. But I mean, anytime you're put in that position, it's always weird to try to have to fight through coverage.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just where his struggles came in, was he wasn't used to having to deal with double coverage and all this attention. And anytime you're put in there, whether it's through injury or retirement, in Baltimore's case with Steve Smith Sr. retiring.
Right.
But he handled it well.
He did. He played well. He had 860 yards, 64 catches, and 6 touchdowns.
Yeah, and I really liked what I saw from him, being put in a position where, you don't really expect, especially having these names, like A.J. Green, who's normally healthy and good. It doesn't usually go down a lot with it, or he's not out a lot of time with injuries.
Right, yeah.
You only have to play maybe 1 or 2 games, and then you're back over in your number 2 spot. But he was actually an extended use, and Dalton used that. He wasn't afraid to throw to him.
Yeah, definitely. And LaFell was a great signing because remember a few years ago he had that big year in New England where he had almost 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. Then he was hurt for a year. New England released him. I think the Bengals, obviously last year, were very happy to have him, and I think he definitely needs to be re-signed.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
They need to almost make that a number 1 priority because he's an amazing number 2, and he's proven that he can step up if need be in the instance of an injured A.J. Green. I mean, you're always going to prefer, whether you're a Bengals fan or not, A.J. Green to be on the field. Well, unless you're playing the Bengals, then you hope A.J. Green's not on the field.
Yep.
But LaFell is an amazing number 2. And I think he's perfect for this offense. I feel like the Patriots lost someone there.
Yeah. They go through receivers all the time, though, and don't seem to suffer for it somehow.
Well, welcome to the business end, and Bill Belichick. The other person I noticed that stepped up was Rex Burkhead. And
Burkhead was forced to play a significant amount because of injuries to Bernard and Hill.
Yes, and even though he's listed on the depth chart as a number 3, he didn't play like a number 3. He came out and he went after people.
Yeah, he ran with authority.
But he kind of was, I don't know if it was intended to make a statement or if he was just like, if he realized it was his time and he just had to do his job, which I'm sure most of it was he just realized he had a job to do and he's going to do it.
Right.
He just did it better than I think anyone anticipated for a 3rd string running back.
He did, yeah. This was really his first chance to prove himself.
Yeah, that he belonged here, and I think he belongs here, even if they keep him as a 3rd string.
I think so too. So he played most of Week 16, and he was the starter for all of Week 17. And in those 2 weeks combined, he carried 39 times, 161 yards for 4.1 average, and 2 touchdowns with 6 catches for another 50 yards. So he was heavily involved, and like you said, he ran angry, sort of.
Yeah,
that's how they say.
Very and in your face.
Yeah, and I agree. He's definitely worth re-signing because he's one injury away to Bernard or Hill from having significant playing time on a weekly basis.
And what's comforting to know is we've talked about comfort in knowing your backup running back, D'Angelo Williams and such,
right,
can fill in for your number 1. But who would ever have thought that your number 3 would be just as good?
Yeah.
I mean, Cincinnati, from a run standpoint, is in a pew. Like, Marvin Lewis has to be the happiest coach in terms of running.
An embarrassment of riches, they call it.
Right? But what I like more is in Week 17 and Week 12, and I noticed this, and you won't find this on stat sheets, and it's very fun to sit there and watch, but his blitz pickup was really good.
Okay.
In the backfield, he was very good at reading where the blitz was coming from and not just stunning the blitzer and rolling off in like sort of like a screen, but stopping the blitzer in his tracks, which for a running back when you're dropping back to help protect the QB is critical. Because Dalton was hit a lot. Yeah. Dalton was hit a lot this year. And Burkhead, I think, did a great job at picking up on those blitzes, which I saw Dalton get hit blinded a lot by, especially from his blind side. I believe he's a right-handed quarterback, so that'd be from the left-hand side. Yep. And Burkhead did a good job in those games of picking them up.
Yeah, so Burkhead is definitely a re-sign.
Even if he's left in as a third string. I mean,
which I think is appropriate. I think he's still
He's
as
still
good as he
developing.
looks. He's still behind Bernard and Hill.
The other one that I saw that we could release was Cedric Pierman. With Burkhead and Bernard healthy, even in a rotational standpoint, these top three are all they need. And
Yeah,
Trey Carson, I don't even think he took the field.
I've never heard that name before. So yeah,
Well,
I think you're
he's
right.
their fifth string running back.
Hopefully, you never have to get down that deep in the
This
depth
isn't
chart.
the Browns and their quarterbacks.
Yeah. So getting back to the red rifle or rocket, as I've learned, some people refer to him as. Dalton had another good year. He's always solid. He had 4,200 yards, 64.7% completions, and 18 touchdowns. He also rushed for 4 touchdowns, which was surprising to me to see.
He doesn't come across to me as a
No,
rushing quarterback, but
he can do it though. And for the second year in a row, Dalton threw under 10 interceptions, which was nice to see. He had 7 2 years ago, 8 this past year. And those are also the only 2 years he's thrown under 10 in his 6-year career.
so it looks like he's going in a really good direction where his interception percentage is dropping.
He's taking care of the football, which is important.
And I think his receivers have helped too, because this is the first year where I didn't notice a significant amount of drops by his receivers,
Right.
which, as we talked about
In the Jacksonville show,
is like, it's unfortunate that the quarterback has to take these stats when it's a receiver's fault.
so yeah, all this production, despite missing some of those most productive weapons in his passing game, was a good sign for Dalton. And getting all those guys back next year should help him get back to his top form.
And they didn't do terrible. I mean, their record wasn't horrible. They did it being the fact of you lost AJ Green at the end, whereas you lost, Hill and them at the beginning. It's like you couldn't catch a break where you had everybody on the field together, and they still managed to do well.
Yeah, 6 wins in the tough AFC North, as we've talked about. All these shows, it's a tough division.
It's a very physical division, and they. But yeah, with everybody back next year, I don't see why they couldn't make a potential playoff run again. Being the fact they've only missed it one in the past 7 years.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a great record to have under your belt.
it'll be tough though. Like we said, Pittsburgh's in line for another strong
run.
season. Baltimore
Is right on their heels.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be...
And eventually the Browns will get there.
Eventually, not next year, but soon-ish.
But even if they come back, I mean, if they make the adjustments, they're going to have to face the Browns. They're in their division.
Right, they could steal a win there. The Browns could, I mean. Yeah. So back to the backfield for a minute, just to talk about the other 2 guys there. Bernard and Hill, they both actually kind of struggled this year. Burkhead looked good when he was on the field, but these 2 guys were both under 4 yards per carry. Let's see. Hill still had a lot of touchdowns, nine scores, and that's mainly, that's his role, is the goal line back. And he's still effective at that, but the yards per carry is a little concerning. For Hill, since his rookie season in 2014, he had the same number of carries as this year, but that year he averaged 5 yards per carry. This year he averaged 3.8. It's just, the production has just gone way down.
Yeah, it's a huge drop, and it's something that they need to keep an eye on too. Because if your so-called lead running back starts to go downhill, I mean, I'm not necessarily saying to cut him, but you may want to think of benching him for a little bit and being like, hey, what's going on? Sometimes you light a fire under a player that way too. You put him on the bench, you bring up, say you move Burkhead to number 2 and Bernard up to number 1. All of a sudden, Hill looks at that as, hold on, this is still my spot. It makes him fight for it.
Right. And there was talk this year about potentially switching Bernard into number 1 role, but unfortunately he didn't do any better with the 3.7 average and just 2 touchdowns. He's smaller, faster. He's not going to be. He's not going to push the pile. He's not going to run people over.
Nice.
Yeah, I think that's it for the backs. Wide receivers, we talked about. AJ Green missed some time, but he was on his way to another great season before a hamstring strain in week 11 ended up sidelining him for the rest of the year. In the 10 games that he did play, he already had 66 catches, 960 yards, and 4 touchdowns.
So you would have easily gone over 1,000.
Easily, yeah.
Possibly even hit 1,100.
Possibly. Maybe even 1,200.
Whoa. Now I think we're pushing it.
But there's no reason to think he won't pick up right where he left off next year.
off season to nurse your injuries, lick your wounds and come back, do it all over again. The life of the NFL, right?
Yeah. And then, we already talked about Brandon LaFell. He's going to be assuming they re-sign him, which they absolutely should.
If they don't, I think somebody needs to take a look at their personnel department.
Yeah, that'll be an issue for them because the third receiver on the roster is Tyler Boyd, who was a rookie out of Pittsburgh last year. And he did see some significant playing time this year once Green went down, but far less productive than LaFell. He had 600 yards and one touchdown. Boyd has really good hands, and he's not afraid of crossing the middle of the field, but he's not, and that's what he is. That's his role, I think, is more the slot guy, where LaFell is a great outside receiver, same with Green. So we'll see what happens with Boyd in year 2, but he's not ready to be the number 2 receiver.
I don't think so. He needs at least another year, maybe 2.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about 2 is, the most fun thing about watching the Bengals offense is their formations. They throw some bizarre looks out there. I remember there was one formation where they lined up in almost 2 separate lines.
Oh, yeah.
They had 2 down linemen, 2 down offensive linemen, but there was that 8-yard gap
all spread out, yeah.
And it was they're not afraid to do bizarre, and as
wacky
long as
stuff, yeah. And they've also been known to add extra linemen instead of the traditional 5 that most formations have.
I've seen them at 6.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one of the best things that they're going to get back from injury and having the offseason to recover is their tight end, Tyler Eifert, which is one of my favorite tight ends in the league.
Oh, yeah.
He's a lot of fun to watch. He's very physical. He can block and he can catch.
He can make some great catches, too. It's not just... He's not one of those tight ends where you have to throw it into his body.
He can go up and
reach out. Yeah, it's impressive.
And that just is a whole, looking at it from a defensive perspective, that's just a whole other thing you have to prepare for because you can't guarantee that coming up from behind them and grappling them, it doesn't matter. If he reaches that hand out, you have to watch where that hand's going now because he can make one-handed punches.
Right, yeah. Problem with him is that he's never played a full season in the league. In his first 4 years, he'll be entering year 5. He played 15 games his rookie year, just 1 game the next year, 13 games, and then 8 games this past year. So he's had some trouble with injuries. Like we said, Gronk, light in every way. So that's going to be something they're going to have to monitor, I think, throughout his career.
But that can come down, they can work on conditioning too to try to help alleviate that. And I think some of the time is if they get Boyd more involved in the offense, they don't have to necessarily have Eifert out there all the time making these catches, which will limit his contact.
Right.
And they can keep him a little bit closer in. And then with Hill healthy and Bernard healthy, they have extra support from the backfield.
Yeah, there really are a lot of different weapons on this offense.
And overall in the league, and this is where fantasy becomes a problem when you try to choose these guys, is it's hard to pick your receivers for these teams because these teams are expanding to where so many people and they spread the ball out.
Because that's what makes sense for an offense. You can't throw it to the same guy on every play. Look at, again, another thing we talked about is the Jaguars and Allen Robinson. You can't throw it to the same guy every single time and expect it to work out.
And teams are just getting better and better. Before there was only a couple teams in the league who were able to do it this way. This year alone, you have not only the Patriots, but you have the Falcons, you have the Steelers, you have the Bengals now. Miami was starting to up and come with spreading the ball out a little bit more. And it's just getting harder for us as fantasy players and fans to choose wide receivers.
Right.
But it's great for the offense.
It's good news for the NFL teams, yeah. All right, so want to talk about some offensive line play?
Ooh.
My free agency pick for the Bengals was the left tackle, Andrew Whitworth. So I watched his gameplay before I looked him up, and I was really surprised to learn that he's 35 years old. Because he looks really good. So you always talk about penalties, which I think is really important for an offensive lineman.
And actually, I have penalty stuff for this.
For Whitworth?
No.
Okay, well let me do Whitworth first.
Oh.
He had only 5 accepted penalties against him all year, which is tied for second best among tackles. This is getting really difficult. 4 holdings, 2 false starts, 1 illegal block in the back, and 2 of those were okay. So by Matt's standards, he should be hung. That's a reference. Referencing another show. I forget when you said that.
I don't know. There's even.
You want to just repeat your statement for
So, they were the least penalized team in the league, and I'll put up a correction if that's off because I didn't bring all my penalty stuff with me. But they had 88 total accepted penalties, 16 false starts, 16 offensive holdings. So not terrible. But false starts are the one penalty that I really get aggravated with. And my statement before, and I even had an image of a little hangman guy, was anyone who commits a false start, especially after the huddle, deserves to be hung. Because there's no excuse for it. If you are in the huddle, you're given all the information you need. You're given the route, you're given the cadence, you're given the count. You come out and you screw it up.
All right, so if Matt was the coach of the Bengals,
I contacted Mark Lewis already.
There would be no opportunity to re-sign Whitworth because he'd be dead.
Well, look at Kelvin Beachum got released by Jacksonville.
Yeah, they can kill him though.
Well, you don't know that yet.
All right. Anyway, back to Whitworth. I watched a few of his games, and like I said, I was really surprised to learn he's 35 years old because he moves really well. He has enough speed to. They often had him pull across the formation and lead block, and he's fully capable of that.
I didn't even look up his age. I can't believe he's 35.
Yeah. Really surprising, right? He's smart too. He showed the ability when there's multiple defenders lined up in front of him. Oftentimes what they'll do is one will blitz, one will drop back into coverage, and he was good enough to identify which one was going to blitz, or even if he didn't see it pre-snap, he's able to shift. He has good footwork.
He has the patience too, because in those instances, like you said, when they bring looks that all look the same, I call it the Mike Zimmer sort of look where they camouflage the defense.
Right.
He doesn't go like a lot of these offensive linemen. The ball snaps and they get physical right away, and sometimes that's where you get that edge blitz is because they take the inside guy. And the other guy gets around you because you're occupied.
Right.
And I like your state too because I saw when those camouflage looks came, he would hold that extra just quarter of a second after the snap and pick it up.
Right.
And I think that's crucial.
Yeah, and he is on the left side. He's on Dalton's blind side, so that's arguably the most important offensive line.
Because unfortunately, that's where I saw a lot of his big hits come from. And I don't think it was necessarily his fault, but I just noticed because it's easier to come at a quarterback from their blind side.
Right. So the first game I watched was against Cleveland. He only allowed 1 pressure, no sacks in this game. He just looked completely dominant in run blocking and pass blocking both. It looked easy, really. Every snap, it didn't look like the defensive end even had a chance of getting around him.
Well, this was against Cleveland.
Yeah, which is why I looked at another game too, because you can't judge the whole thing against one game against Cleveland. Oh, also the Bengals had 271 rushing yards in that game, so it was good blocking all around. So the other game I looked at was Week 3 when they played the Broncos. Obviously, this is a much stronger test than Cleveland. In this game, Whitworth... Actually, Whitworth was mostly matched up against Shane Ray. He did play a few snaps where Miller came over to that side. I guess. Well, interestingly, Whitworth didn't have that much trouble with Miller as much as he did against Ray, who actually got 2 sacks in the game, getting through Whitworth. So one was basically a coverage sack. It's Dalton he dropped back and he sort of stood in the pocket for, I think it was over 5 seconds. Eventually, Whitworth got pushed backwards and Ray got around him and made the tackle. The other one, maybe because I'm biased because this is the guy I picked to watch, but I wouldn't blame it solely on him either because he was blocking. Dalton decided to try to scramble, but he went up the middle, and Ray just sort of like disengaged from Whitworth and reached out and made the tackle. So those were the 2 plays where he
and I think that type
struggled.
of play is on Dalton.
Yeah, usually when you scramble, it's
you
going
to
to be
scramble
on
right or
the
left.
outside.
You don't unless there's that blatant
Huge
gap right up in the middle of the field.
I think that's the thing. If there's a few different ways he could try to block, right? Like he can try to push his guy to the outside, and that's when the quarterback's supposed to step up. But in this case, Whitworth kind of held his ground right where he was. So when Dalton tried to step up, Ray was right there. So those are the 2 bad plays. he's still, and there were no additional pressures allowed in the game, even when Miller came over to his side a few plays. So he looked strong. He held up. In run blocking, he looked just as dominant as against Cleveland. There's just one play in particular I want to highlight. They were on the Denver 5. They ran to Whitworth's side of the field, and right away he was able to push his guy up the field, really collapsing Ray inside and sealing off the corner of the defense. And it was pretty much a walk-in touchdown for Hill. So I credited Whitworth basically with that touchdown.
I can get behind that.
Yeah, overall he's a great tackle, one of the league's best still at age 35. Because his age is getting up there, I would recommend he be re-signed short-term. Maybe just 1 year. Yeah, that's what I wrote, 1 to 2 year, maybe just one. But I think he's probably got a few good years left in him because he doesn't have an injury history like a lot of guys do.
Mm-hmm. I think what's kind of funny, and I know it's taken me this long to mention it, but for those of you who listen, Mike and I don't share notes before we talk about this stuff.
Yeah, we just show up and
which is kind of, it makes it more interesting because it's like, you know, you bring information that I don't know and I bring other information that
like your thing was the Browns, the first time anyway. I didn't know that stat, or that fact.
But I'm going to make this awesome segue to the defense because my free agent was also 35 years old.
Oh.
And is one of my favorite players on this team. And that's Carlos Dansby, bringing it over to the defensive side of the ball. 13 seasons in the league. This was his 13th season. I put third one's in the name, but that was wrong because I forgot how to read. Because he was actually with the Browns before this.
Right.
And I feel like that was I feel bad for the Browns because they could have used him.
Yeah, surprised they let him go.
What amazed me was he played for the Cardinals, the Dolphins, then he went back to the Cardinals for a season. Then he went to Browns and then the Bengals. But what amazed me was looking at his stat chart is each year he got better with the teams. For instance, with Miami, his first year he had a total of 95 combined tackles. Then he went to 103. Then he went to 134.
Wow.
Then he went back to Arizona, had 122. In his 2-year stint with the Browns, he had 93. Then he went up to 108. So every team he's played for, he's gotten better as he's stayed with them, which is a great sign for the Bengals.
Yeah.
Because the Bengals, he had 114 tackles, a sack, and 6 pass defenses. Which means if this is his benchmark and he's only going to get better,
all right,
that's not bad. But he is, he's slightly down from 2015, being the fact that he didn't have any interceptions at all. But he's up in everything else, which is a good sign. He is, he's up in everything else.
Yeah.
But at 35,
at some point he's going to stop getting better, right?
Eventually. And Mike agreed when I mentioned this, that he's sort of like the James Harrison for the Bengals. You look at his chart and he just gets better as he sits with his team, which is a great sign for a player that he adapts quickly.
Right.
He's put in a new scheme and he goes, cool, let's do it. The stats for the defense, though, sorry, I jumped right into that, but 35 years old and he's just as good. I can't argue.
It's exciting. Can't not talk about it.
The defense was lower middle of the pack. The only thing that rated in the top 10 was average points per game at 19.7. But after that, it sort of falls off the cliff. They averaged 350.8 total yards allowed, which was 17th. 237.5 of those were passing, which was 11th. And 113.2 rushing yards, which was 21st in the league. Why didn't I have an asterisk there? I don't know. Awesome. I have no idea. My notes are a mess. Just ask Mike. There's just scrawls.
There's papers everywhere.
I am a very diligent note taker, which is why I think I'd be a good coach for that. I take notes on everything. They only had 105 total defensive penalties thrown against them, which was 19th overall in the league. And they, as a team, they were the least penalized at about 88 total accepted penalties. I didn't have a lot notice with the defense here. They played very decently. And, that's why I made this note. So they were 21st in the league against the rush. But what I noticed is when they played Denver in week 3, which was against C.J. Anderson, who I didn't even hear of this guy before, and he was fantastic till he got injured.
Yeah.
They were pretty good against the rush. They only let him take about 4 yards. I mean, that's great on a first down run, but average across the game, only 4 yards. I mean, they held him to a respectable second down, 2nd and 6, 2nd and 7.
Yeah.
They have a hard time against big receivers.
Right. I was watching that game too to look at Whitworth, but they really struggled to cover Sanders and Thomas.
Yeah, Demaryius Thomas was, I think, one of their bigger problems. I don't like the way they set up their defense because the number 1 receiver, they have no more than a 2-yard cushion, and then after that they expand that cushion. The second receiver has upwards of 5 yards of cushion, and as we know from the rest of the videos, I can't stand that. I don't like giving big receivers that cushion. And they didn't fix that at all. And to me, that put them in a category where, once again, like Cleveland, surprisingly, their offense puts them in the game, but their defense struggled. And as much as they were decent all the way around, that's something they really need to look at. Versus the Texans, though, for instance, for Week 16. And as Mike can look at the notes, I'll take a picture of this. On 3 drives in a row, they had sacks. They were sacking Osweiler faster than I could write it down. So there's literally a line here to show that they just sacked. 3 plays in a row. So the pass rush was good.
Geno Atkins, you mentioned the pass rush. He's at the defensive tackle position. He's just one of the most disruptive defensive tackles I've seen.
For sure.
And paired with Carlos Dunlap coming around the outside, it's a strong pass rush. Go ahead, continue.
No, I like that assessment. And say what you will about Vontaze Burfict.
Boo.
Controversy here, Mike. We're going to not say it. You can't argue his talent on the field.
No, you can't.
I don't like him personally.
I also don't like him, but he's strong, he's fast.
And he's physical as all hell.
And that's where some of the controversy comes
from
sometimes.
I mean, but you can't argue his skill. He does his job, and he does it very well.
So between him and Dansby, that's a great outside linebacker pairing. And then they've got Ray Maualuga, who I don't know quite as much about in the middle, but this is one of the teams that's becoming rarer these days that runs a 4-3 defense.
I don't like it. As a defensive coach,
I've
always been partial to a 3-4, and real quick, because not everybody understands this, 3-4 and 4-3, there's literally one difference. They're almost the same. The difference is you switch a linebacker and a lineman. And in the 4-3, the way it works, you have 4 linemen and 3 supporting linebackers. And then you have 2 corners, 2 safeties. In a 3-4, it's just the opposite. You have 3 linemen, 4 linebackers, and then your corners and safeties.
Right, so it's just one position change, but it ends up changing the personnel a lot. Because in a 3-4, you need the outside linebackers to be speedy and able to drop into coverage, something you almost never do with the defensive end in a 4-3.
And to me, a 4-3 is a better rush defense, which these stats would, well, I was going to say back up. Never mind. 21st in the league. But usually I see the 4-3 as a better rush defense because you have more people at the line. You can stop it a little bit faster.
And I'd say usually you have bigger people. It's more about strength, whereas the 3-4 has more speed. That's what I'd say.
Exactly. Real quick here, because we're going to end up wrapping this up here. My favorite player is their free safety, George Iloka. I don't have much on this guy, but I just watching him while watching the defense as a whole. This guy's just everywhere. I don't know. There's just something about him. I think he fits this team, and I say that a lot. I know I say these players fit these teams, but that's a good sign if you're saying that.
Yep.
Because there's nothing worse than saying, guy doesn't belong there.
Yeah.
Like Jamie Collins, I think I said get rid of him and replace him with Ryan Long. No. I don't remember what I did. Ignore that last comment.
The editor will get it.
Why did you look at me? I don't know. I think it's just a matter of they lost some of their key. They never had their key weapons on the field at the same time. I think that's why this team struggled.
Mm-hmm. And a struggling offense hurts the defense too because they have to play more. Mm-hmm. They don't get to rest as much, and they're just on the field a lot more and get tired out.
But I think once everybody heals up and they come back, they should be in a good position for contention. Mm-hmm. Right up there with Baltimore and Pittsburgh. They have the capability for it.
Yeah. And all three teams are usually jockeying for a playoff spot in the final couple weeks.
And as we've said several times, this division is just brutal to each other. I mean,
really looking forward to it again next year.
Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, I think, has the deepest history here.
Really quickly, do you remember that playoff? This is when I realized how much I dislike Vontaze Burfict. The playoff game 2 years ago.
2 years ago?
Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. I think it all started when Ryan Shazier laid a questionable hit on, it was either Hill or Bernard, I forget, but I think they ended up ruling it as legal. There was no penalty called.
No, they thought it was a helmet-to-helmet collision, but he led with his shoulder and the helmets happened to collide.
It just looked really bad. It was a massive hit still, and Hill was down for a while, a couple minutes on the field. Next drive, Vontaze Burfict comes out. I would say blatantly after Roethlisberger threw the ball, Burfict just tackles him, drives him into the ground with his shoulder with clear intent to injure. And then on the very last drive, and this ended up being the nail in the coffin for them because it put Pittsburgh in game-winning field goal range. But Antonio Brown was coming across the middle to make a catch. The ball was a bad
overthrown.
Throw. It was uncatchable, and Burfict just took him out. He completely laid him out.
And Antonio Brown does not have the frame to handle a full-on hit from linebacker that big.
So, and it ended up being flagged, obviously. Pittsburgh got into field goal range because of it and won. But that was the game where I realized, who is this Vontaze Burfict guy? And then he's been followed throughout his career by fines, suspensions, all related to illegal hits and harming other players' safety. So I don't like him. As good as he is, undeniably.
He's the old school, like the 50s through 70s enforcer.
He would be perfect there, yeah.
Oh, that was his time frame. I mean, because you have enforcers now, like you were saying, Mike, that do their job of laying hard hits, but they're legal.
Right.
But he has like malicious, like you're gonna remember you came into my zone.
It's like if you remember Brandon Merriweather, he was a safety for the Redskins for a while.
Or even John Lynch.
Yeah. Yeah. They're just headhunters.
More recent for these guys.
Just headhunters, and the league is obviously rightly so.
This is why they've clamped down on the rules, because it's no longer about how
it's dangerous. Yeah.
As they said, it's 100% injury rate.
But anyway,
final thoughts.
This is another team that looks pretty good, top to bottom, and I hope they get Whitworth back and all their guys from injury on offense. And like I said, I think it's going to be close again next year. Close, much closer than it was this year, between the Bengals, Ravens, and Steelers, all fighting for playoff spots.
Dansby, I would do short-term contract, being the fact he is 35. I would say 1 to 2 years to start and see where he is from there.
Yeah.
But they need to start looking at maybe potentially grooming secondary linebacking core, especially because they only have 3 of them out there.
Right.
And they need to get speed.
Yeah, agreed.
Other than that, yeah, I really think it's going to be a battle for the first place in the AFC North next year.
Looking
and it's going to be fun.
To it. It's going to be so much fun, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us again as we wrapped up the AFC North. If you like everything you heard, there's a like and subscribe button we'd like you to click. They would like you to click it too. Leave your comments below of your opinion of these guys. I mean, it's an interesting division overall. It doesn't have to necessarily be about the Bengals, but let's be nice to each other. Friendly debate, as you hear Mike and I, that's what we're all about.
Yep.
And join us again soon.
Yeah, see you guys next time.
Take care, everybody.